Welcome to the Chapter 4 video on job satisfaction. In this video, we will define job satisfaction and discuss its facets. We will also describe several predictors of job satisfaction, including values, moods, and emotions. So let's get started. Now that we have a basic understanding of job performance and why it matters, we need to discuss what job satisfaction is and what it predicts, especially since job satisfaction is a pivotal predictor of employee performance. Job satisfaction is defined as a pleasurable emotional state based on appraisal of one's job experiences, and work environment. It typically reflects a holistic evaluation of multiple work factors and considers both how you think and how you feel. Several common facets of job satisfaction include compensation and benefits factors like your pay, your promotions, as well as social factors like likability of coworkers or the supervisory style. There's also work factors like the level of autonomy or stimulation you have at work, the perceived meaningfulness or significance of your job, as well as things like task variety, level of responsibility, enrichment, crafting, and learning opportunities. Job satisfaction also includes status factors like the prestige of the job and organization, how much power the employee has over others, or their hierarchical status. And lastly, it includes environmental conditions as well, like the perceived comfort of the job as well as the safety of your workplace. Now, of all the facets of job satisfaction, work-related factors appear to be the biggest predictors of employee satisfaction. When thinking of job satisfaction, there are several factors that predict an employee's level of job satisfaction. First is the employee's values, or what they seek to obtain or attain at work. And according to value percepts theory, employees are more satisfied when their job provides them with the things that the employee values most. For example, some people value wealth above all else. Thus, if an employee values wealth the most, that employee would be satisfied when the organization hits or exceeds their desired target salary. And alternatively, that person would be dissatisfied when they perceive that they are underpaid. Now, in practice, value percept is more complicated as employees often value multiple things and place a different level of importance on each valued item. Another factor that predicts employee job satisfaction is mood. Moods are states of feelings that often are mild in intensity, they last for an extended period of time, and they're not explicitly directed at or caused by something. So their causes are often unknown or unclear. Think about when you just wake up in a crappy mood. You can't always explain why that is. And in general, moods aren't associated with distinct facial features or facial expressions. Moods can be thought of in terms of their pleasantness or lack thereof and their activation or lack thereof. Activated moods include moods that like surprise or arousal. And conversely, a deactivated mood would be something like being inactive or quiet. And unpleasant moods are moods like being grouchy or sad. And then pleasant moods include being cheerful or pleased. Now, there are two main dimensions of moods. Negative affect, or NA, is an unfavorable or pessimistic evaluation that includes feelings like nervousness, stress, and anxiety. And then positive affect, or PA, on the other hand, is a favorable or optimistic evaluation that includes feelings like excitement, enthusiasm, and elation. Beyond NA and PA, moods can also be neutral. And in general, across people tend to experience a mildly positive mood when nothing is happening, such that they tend to be a little bit more positive in general. And this is known as a positivity offset. It is important to note that NA and PA are not on a single continuum. So in the illustration below, the first one would reflect a single continuum ranging from NA to PA. This illustration is wrong. Now, the second or bottom illustration depicts two separate continuums, one ranging from low NA to high NA, and the other ranging from low PA to high PA. This is the correct way to think about NA and PA as two distinct constructs. So put differently, it is possible to be simultaneously high or activated in both NA and PA, just as you can be simultaneously low in both NA and PA. So for example, think of how you would feel if you started a new job or you moved to a big city. How do you feel? Odds are you feel excited, but also nervous. Excited is a characteristic of high PA, while nervousness is a characteristic of high NA. Both are activated simultaneously. Thus, you would be concurrently high in both NA and PA. And this is why you can't think of NA and PA as being on a single continuum. They are different things and they can co occur. Now, unlike moods, emotions are feelings that are more intense, they're more discrete, they're short lived, and they're often caused by a very specific event. So they are very brief in duration, lasting only a few seconds or minutes. And in general, emotions are target specific and they're action oriented, meaning that there is often a clear target or reason for the emotion, as well as an immediate action or response. So, for example, let's pretend that out of nowhere you hear an extremely loud noise. How would you respond? Your first immediate response is likely to duck down, to flinch, or to jump. In this example, the emotion is surprise or maybe even fear. The target is the loud noise itself, and the action is whether you ducked down, you jumped, or you flinched. Importantly, emotions are almost always associated with distinct facial features. For example, in the image on the screen, think about what emotion the man is demonstrating. Odds are you said maybe surprise or shock, as many of these facial features are universally understood. Things like raised eyebrows, open mouth, jaw dropped. And according to Ekman, there are 6 universal emotions that almost anyone can recognize in others. These emotions include things like anger, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness, and surprise. And since Ekman's original classification, contempt has also been added as a universal emotion. And in general, many other emotions do exist, but they aren't universally recognized across cultures and contexts. And emotions are important for enhancing satisfaction and performance for several reasons. First, emotions make us more sensitive to contextual and social cues in the workplace. For example, individuals showing more negative emotions are better able to discern truthful or inaccurate information in others, and they're also more socially observant. Emotions also make our thinking more rational and help to justify social behavior. So please take a second to review the video linked below on emotional intelligence, as this is a great representation of how emotions help with our rationality. Go ahead and watch the video and edit at the 1 minute and 6 second mark. Another good example of how emotions impact rationality is the case of Phineas Gage. So Phineas was a railroad foreman, and while blasting rock, a metal rod went into his skull. Miraculously, he did survive. However, the injury to his left frontal lobe caused significant changes in his personality and behavior. And researchers have since concluded that the rod had severed parts of his brain responsible for emotions because he could no longer regulate his emotions or select an appropriate emotional response in social situations. His rationality and his decision making were almost entirely lost. Now, emotions also provide ethicality and morality to our work behaviors. So even though people think their moral boundaries are logical and reasonable, moral judgments are largely based on emotions versus actual cognitions. So as an example, employees are more likely to act unethically when they are experiencing negative emotions. Furthermore, some emotions have moral implications. For example, things like having sympathy for the suffering of others or having guilt after engaging in inappropriate or unethical behavior. And typically, responses to moral emotions differ from our responses to other emotions because of the morality behind them. Moral emotions do develop during childhood, so dispositional and situational factors impact the extent to which people develop moral emotions. So, not everyone feels guilt, embarrassment, shame, regret, remorse. And not only does it depend on your kind of history and your how you're raised, but there's other factors as well, like cognitive abnormalities, developmental or learning delays, or things like certain personality traits lack moral emotions. So people high in the dark triad traits, which we'll talk about in the future, tend to lack authentic moral emotions as well. And emotions do come in 2 forms. Some emotions are felt, meaning that they reflect our actual emotions. For example, showing sadness when we're sad or showing happiness when we're happy. Other emotions are displayed such that they follow normative rules and standards for how, when, and where the emotion should be expressed. So, for example, there are certain emotions that should or shouldn't be displayed at a funeral. Displaying a non normative emotion like happiness or laughter would be quite inappropriate. So, most people display an expected emotion, even if their felt emotions are different. And because displayed emotions are socially constructed, they are learned and not innate. So, one must observe or be told about the appropriate emotion in order to know to display it. And in general, the greater the difference between the felt and displayed emotions, the more emotional control is needed to regulate the displayed emotion. And this is because there's more faking involved. If you feel one way, but you're displaying a different emotion, that takes more control because you're faking it. And that requires more effort. So, emotions, the big question is, can emotions and moods be caught? And the answer is absolutely yes. As an example, emotional contagion arises when emotions become imitated. This is something that happens because people are subconsciously identifying and imitating the micro and macro expressions in others. Now, please pause this video and review the linked YouTube video and the NPR article. Take a few seconds, wrap your head around emotional contagion and this idea of subconscious imitation. And another example of contagion is mass hysteria, and this is often mood related. So take a second, please review the attached video for a detailed description of mass hysteria. Although I want you to watch the entire video, pay special attention to what they're saying at the 2 minute and 30-second mark, as that's specific to moods. Okay, that is it for this chapter. If you have any questions, please email me on Canvas or email me directly at samantha.jordan@unt.edu.